The first one I had maybe over a year ago now at this point. But it's coming back up in a few ways in that it's relating also to the others that I know in my more personal life, back more so where I came from. In the experience, I'll go over it briefly, was I was in a store, like a department store, something like a Target or like a Walmart. And as I'm walking down one of the aisles on my left-hand side, there was the entrance to this maze. Now it looked like you're entering another aisle, but with my awareness, I could see that it wasn't just another aisle. It was like a maze, really very kind of complicated and deep. But I knew that I would not get lost in the maze because of my connection to my real awareness. And I could see that at the center of the maze was this individual who I used to know in my personal life. And so I very quickly came to the center of the maze, and I remember giving him the opportunity to step up. And in one of the questions that I asked him, because he was standing in the center of the maze with his arms crossed, like he was cold, and he was kind of had his legs together and, you know, very kind of shut down body language with his head facing down. He was very locked into this place, and it was very misty, very dark in this maze. And I gave him the opportunity to step up, and I asked him the question. I said, do you know where you are? And I remember him just looking at me. He just looked at me almost like he didn't couldn't speak, like he couldn't speak. So he did not answer that question. I asked him, I said, do you know where you are? And as he kind of just looked at me, I said, I remember I saying to him at that time that, you know, I'm not staying here. You know, I'm going to leave. You know, I'm not going to stay in this maze with you. And I said, you know, you already know the way out. That was very interesting that I told him that. I said, you already know the way out, but you have to decide to leave. And so I remember I left the maze, and I went through another experience after I had came out. But it was very interesting that he was unwilling to come out of this state. And I'm starting to see this on the real side with a lot of the other individuals that I know, that their intuitive self sees the position that they're in. It sees the real awareness and the difference between like the personal self and these things. And it's trying to give them these hints, you know, whether it's me asking them the question, do you know where you're at? Or they themselves going through any kind of experience on the real side or with their other bodies. They're getting these little hints, but they really have to decide. So that was the little experience I wanted to share. I don't know, Duane, you wanted to comment on that, or I could go to this next one.
Yeah, that's good. One at a time, Jeremy, so we don't get too confused here, because yes, we have a lot to deal with and understand. And yes, we are confusing others because for them to see it, it's not the explanation so much, that's a reference, but for them to see it. And yeah, there's always going to be this confusion and what have you. And yeah, they can see it, but they have to make the choice. And the trick is, of all of this, is learning to let go. Not searching for an answer or a better way to do it. Those are things we do in creation, which understandably, you know, are so. Okay, but the reality of, you know, really seeing what's going on is learning to let go and separating ourselves from it. In other words, we don't have to get rid of it. We just become the objective view of what the personal self is involved in and everyone else's personal self. And just like you saw, this individual, you know, has the knowledge to make the decision, but there's many factors involved too, with the other attachments that he has. In other words, you know, just like you kids, you came down here, most people won't do that because they want to stay attached to where they are, their family, their ideas, their routines. All these things are very important to them, for them to be objective and see something else. And so, yeah, that's a big decision. And so this is where, and what you asked the individual, that was cool. Yes. Do you know where you're at? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know where you came from? Do you know where you're going? you know, confront them, use something to see if they will, if that will prompt them to see something else, or all of a sudden start to look at something else, just to prompt them. And it's not necessarily that you're trying to decide for them, you're simply trying to prompt them to see something else, which is very, very good. So you be ready for that, you know, just like a comedian on stage, you know, has to be ready for the hecklers. If his jokes aren't going good, then all of a sudden he can work off the hecklers to make things funny where maybe his personal routine didn't do good. And so again, it takes a whole lot for us because of the complexity of this world, and not realizing mainly the complexity of ourselves, how it keeps going on, and thinking in terms of how self-convinced we are to face all of this and to see it. But the trick is just learning to let go and kind of let it be over there like books on a shelf and see it objectively, and then just take what you need to play with and act out your part in creation so as to become more aware and help others become more aware. Yeah, that's huge. And so most of the world is locked into religious and spiritual and political ideas that they've been ingrained with, thinking that, oh, this is, you know, this is such and so. Last night, Val and I were watching a movie, and it was about three brothers, and there was a death, and they were at the grave, and one brother said to the other, he said, I obeyed all the rules of God, I obeyed all the rules of man, and basically said, I failed. And then he looked at the other brother and he said, you know, you didn't do any of this, and they all loved you. So again, it's not in the ideas, is it? They're only references. So as we learn to be indifferent to these things and really let go, let them be what they are, the creations they are, then it's okay. Then we're not in the mess. And that's like the maze there. The individual's in there, but that's his mind frame. He's fine with the maze, just like the reptilians are fine with destroying. That's their way. That's their tradition. They've been ingrained with that. They're embedded with that. They're stamped with that. And for them to be indifferent to that, to see something else, that's huge. That's really huge. And it's a step at a time. So realistically, you know, you actually have to, in a way, trick people into becoming wonderful. There was this one lady that I was with many years ago, and she was with Rebazar too. And eventually I said, see, I tricked you into being wonderful. And she said, yes, you did. You tricked me. And that's kind of how it is. You know, just like parents with their kids, they do funny little things to get their attention so that, you know, they're okay. You know, sometimes they're crying and they're pouting and they're discouraged, but the parents do something else to get them around, to kind of trick them to be okay. And that's really what it is. So it's not about truth. It's not about all these things we've come to know. You can throw all this stuff out. It's not about any of that nonsense anymore. It's like the sun shining. It's about what's real and really what makes sense to where it's okay. And again, look at the birds. They don't do any of this nonsense, but who refers to that? The air you breathe, that's fine. It doesn't need any of this. The sun's shining. So again, we have the best references if we'll utilize them, and to be indifferent to all this nonsense and stop holding on to things that don't matter. But again, it's all about choice. Yeah, that's the big step into the unknown constantly. But that's what's real. It's what you do not know is real.